on the other side of the aisle, they were rude. They set a new standard for being ugly, in my view. We were all, even me, we thought it was a new standard for vitriol.
Well, you saw a lot of disgraceful displays by the Democrats, from Al Green yelling and knowing in clear violation of the House rules that he was trying to interrupt a speech that we were not going to let happen. But even the Democrats sitting down while the widow of a slain police officer was introduced, and a 13-year-old kid who beat cancer is being introduced, and they're sitting on their hands the whole time. It was just disgraceful. But President Trump gave a phenomenal speech, really laid out what's great about America, how he's going to get our country back on track, things he's already done in historic fashion in just 6 weeks to start addressing things like securing our border. I mean, we've got border crossings down over 90% since Donald Trump took office. So he's delivering on his promises, and the best is yet to come.
Will Green get censured?
We're obviously going to look at all of that, but he knows what he did was a clear violation of the House rules, and it shouldn't have happened, and it's going to be dealt with.
Please.
The gentleman from Louisiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank Chairman Smith for not just yielding, but for his leadership in getting us to this point. Mr. Speaker, we are at the precipice of the new golden age of America. And how do we get there? We get there by actually making the right decisions for those hardworking families who have been struggling. If you listen to the people on the other side, Mr. Speaker, who have over and over again said they are against this bill and all the things that are in this bill for hardworking families, you would think the last 4 years things have been going great for middle America. I don't know what parallel universe they've been living in, Mr. Speaker, but we heard the message that the voters sent, who said they're sick and tired of high inflation, of high gas prices, of not being able to fill up their grocery cart because of the spending in Washington for Washington at their expense. And so what does this bill do? It says we're finally going to turn that around and deliver a bill that focuses on families in America. We hear a lot from the other side, Mr. Speaker, about billionaires, tax cuts for billionaires. You go look at this bill. Everybody's had the opportunity to read the bill. They actually read the whole bill on the Senate floor. Only took 14 hours. And if you listened, one of the things you'd find out, Mr. Speaker, is there are some new tax cuts in this bill, but not for billionaires. So then it would beg the question, why does the other side keep hiding behind billionaires as their excuse to vote no? Because they made a decision, Mr. Speaker, early off, they don't want to give people back their money. They want to keep that power in Washington. That's really what's at stake here. That's the big fight that has been going on for years. The other side won that fight the last few years by raising taxes, raising spending, growing Washington. And while they did that, families in America suffered. Inflation went up for those hardworking families while Washington grew. Interest rates grew up to the point they couldn't even afford to buy a first-time home because Washington grew. And we said it's enough that Washington has to finally start living within Washington's means so that families in America can finally start living the American dream again. That's what this bill focuses on, Mr. Speaker. And how do we do it? We do it, number one, by locking in rates for everybody. Nobody's taxes go up, Mr. Speaker. Nobody's. Now, the other side's upset about that, and I understand it, because they don't want just the billionaires to go up, because they know in this bill the income groups that get hit the hardest, if a no vote prevails, and we've heard them, they're all going to vote no, Mr. Speaker, but if a no vote prevails, the income groups that get hit the hardest are the lower and middle income groups of America. And they know that. They're watching this vote. And you can say billionaires all day long, but you know what the new tax cuts in this bill are? Because there are new tax cuts. For the waiter and waitress who's working maybe 2-3 shifts at a restaurant, at a diner, barely getting by, that's the new tax cut that we're putting in this bill. And so you would say, well, then how could the other side possibly vote against that? But, Mr. Speaker, they are. And maybe a focus group told them that if they curse enough and if they say billionaires enough, those families will forget what's actually happening. But they're not going to forget because they're paying attention. You know what the average pay for a worker in America who makes tip money is, under this bill? $32,000 a year. That's right. Billionaires aren't even allowed to be eligible for that tax break. But the waitress who's working 2-3 shifts, barely getting by, making $32,000 a year, finally gets a little bit more money. And yes, every Democrat has bragged over here that they're going to vote against that. They don't want that waitress to get that money back in her pocket. But we're going to make sure she gets that tax break, Mr. Speaker, because she's struggling. She maybe wants to put together a college fund for her kid. Maybe she wants to take her family on a vacation. And she's going to have that opportunity when this bill passes. You know who else we're going to give opportunity to, Mr. Speaker, in this bill? The other tax cut. Sorry, it's not a billionaire again. It's that shift worker working overtime. Not the billionaires, person that's showing up at the factory, making stuff in America, who's paying taxes on the overtime, but they're away from their family, and they're looking at that check at the end of being away from their family for a few extra hours, and they're trying to make ends meet for their family, and they go, geez, I've got to get all that extra money back to the government. Is it worth being away from my family? And we say, you know what? Yeah, normal tax rates apply on everything else, but if you work overtime, you're not going to pay taxes on that overtime. Somebody making $60,000 a year, not the billionaire. Say billionaire enough, and maybe that shift worker won't know what you're doing, but Mr. Speaker, they do know. They do know what's about to happen, because everybody's watching this vote, and that's a good thing, because that shift worker deserves that extra money back. Might not seem a lot to somebody who deals with billions and trillions of dollars up here in Washington and grows agencies by 20, 30% every couple of years, and just thinks if you double the size of an agency over 5 years, somebody's going to pay for that. Well, you know who's paying for it? That hardworking family. You know, we clean up waste, fraud, and abuse, and it's been mocked by the other side. They think it's cool to mock what we're doing to finally root out waste, fraud, and abuse. Let the other party, Mr. Speaker, be the defender of waste, fraud, and abuse in Washington, but we're cleaning it up in this bill. USDA has pointed out that there's about $10 billion a year in waste just in the SNAP program. Fraud, improper payments. Not going to children that you hear about on the floor and not all these other. It's going to improper payments, to fraud. $10 billion a year. But, Mr. Speaker, when you hear about the billionaires and you say, well, how could anybody vote against this bill? Think about what a no vote means. Because I'm proud of the yes vote that we're about to cast to help those families. But everybody who votes no, Mr. Speaker, make no mistake about it, everybody who votes no is going to be asked a question by that waitress making $32,000 a year, saying, why do you want me to pay more money in my tips so that $10 billion of fraud goes out in the SNAP program? Because you voted against cleaning it up and you voted against no tax on tips. That's the no vote. You can't hide behind the billionaire anymore. You're going to have to face the reality, Mr. Speaker, that this bill actually delivers for the working families of this country who have been struggling. They haven't been living on Easy Street the last 4 years, but they went to the polls in November and said, we want to try a different approach. And this is that different approach, to give them more power, to give them more opportunity. You know we're giving opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to in this bill. Again, if you're going to vote no, this is what the no vote will take away. We actually create something unique in this bill. Hadn't been talked about yet, but it's in the bill. I'm real proud of it. We create opportunity in school choice for every, not billionaire, low-income families. Every low-income family in America will be eligible for a scholarship so that their kid can go to the school of their choice if they're in a failing school. Now, you vote no, Mr. Speaker. How do you tell that family that their kid doesn't have the same opportunity they deserve that every other kid in America can have? If somebody can afford it, they can go to a private school. But if that low-income family can't afford it, We're finally giving them a lifeline in this bill, Mr. Speaker, and saying you can have the same opportunity. But a no vote says that you don't think that that parent deserves the same opportunity? And then you hide behind billionaires. There's going to be no hiding, Mr. Speaker. We all know when this board lights up what the consequences are. And why do we say there's going to be a golden era in this country? We're securing our border in this bill, too. We're opening up American energy in this bill. Everywhere from the North Slope of Alaska to, yes, the Gulf of America, where President Biden had shut down American energy. He green-lighted Russia's Nord Stream pipeline so Russia could produce their energy, funding billions of dollars to go fund their war against Ukraine. But in America, we were shut down. We open it up in this bill, Mr. Speaker. American workers get to produce American energy, not just for America. It's going to lower the price at the pump. Again, you're a middle-income family. The billionaire doesn't care what the cost of gasoline is. You know who does? That waitress making $32,000 a year saves that tip money. Maybe she can go on a trip and get in her car and drive and afford the gasoline now because we'll be producing more. We actually have lease sales in this bill for once, so we can produce energy in America. We have great natural resources. We just had them shut down for 4 years by an administration that said no to American energy, said yes to other countries' energy. Iran was able to sell their oil on world markets thanks to the previous administration. That party's over. And when America starts producing more energy, not only does it help lower the price for families here in America, not only does it create great jobs here in America, but all the bad guys around the world, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, you name your country, they're not going to have a cartel-like exclusive license on global energy anymore because America's going to be back in the game. Let's get this country back in the game. Let's get this country back on track. Let's actually promote opportunity in the American dream again for anybody who wants it. You want to work? There's going to be more opportunity than you've ever had before. If you're disabled on Medicaid right now, you've been crowded out of those programs by people turning down work. Able-bodied people, 35-year-olds sitting at home playing video games. They're going to now have to go get a job. That's right. And by the way, that's a good thing for them. Their mom doesn't want them sitting in the basement playing video games anyway. But now it no longer will be crowding out Medicaid for the truly needy people who deserve it. The disabled people will not be getting crowded out of those programs by people who can actually go get a job, and there are going to be a lot of great jobs, Mr. Speaker, a lot of great jobs in this country. America's coming back. You can vote no all day long, and you can hide behind billionaires all day long, but we're going to keep moving forward because this country doesn't sit down in the fetal position. America's ready for a rebirth, and we're going to deliver it. President Trump is at the helm now. It's a new day. World leaders know it. The bad guys know it around the world. But you know what? Those hardworking families who have been waiting for this relief for a long, long time are finally going to realize help is on the way because Republicans in Congress, any Democrats that want to join, Mr. Speaker, are free to, but they're bragging that they don't want to be a part of this. But you know what? The hardworking families of America are hungry for this kind of change. Take power away from Washington, give it back to the people, and watch what happens. Great things are ahead for this country. Greatest country in the history of the world. We are finally going to give and restore that great American dream and that hope for those families who have been waiting way too long. That help is coming. We're going to pass this bill. President Trump's going to sign it. It's going to be a great 4th of July. Let's pass the bill, Mr. Speaker. I yield back to balance my time.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Gentleman from Louisiana, the Majority Leader, Mr. Scalise.
The distinguished gentleman from Louisiana is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Chair for yielding and for helping get this process to the floor, despite so many attempts by the Democrats to block this effort to cut waste, fraud, and abuse in government spending. And we've seen it over and over and over again. You know, every time we have tried to get our economy back on track, to put more money in the pockets, by the way, of hard-working families, as we just succeeded in doing with the One Big Beautiful Bill. Every step of the way, the only people trying to block that effort have been Democrats in Washington. And they are getting nervous, feeling the heat from people back home, Mr. Speaker, that are angry, saying, why did you vote? Those waiters and waitresses who make $32,000 a year, when they keep hearing them talk about billionaires and voting not against billionaires, they're voting against $32,000 a year waiters and waitresses, cops working the beat who don't want to have to pay overtime taxes, and we protected them from that. Every Democrat voted no, Mr. Speaker, so I can understand why they come up here and they want to talk about anything other than what we're actually doing to deliver for those families. Interesting how they talk about Jeffrey Epstein, because for 4 years, Mr. Speaker, President Joe Biden had those files, and not a single Democrat that you're hearing tonight tried to get those files released. And so the House Republicans are working to do that, and of course, they're in a tizzy, Mr. Speaker, because they're finally being exposed for covering it up for 4 years. And so let them continue to come up and talk about all the deficit spending that they created, while they cite, when they talk about, oh, gee whiz, the one big beautiful bill, you know, they talk about the House. You look at our scorekeeper here in the House, Mr. Speaker, and they say, oh, it's going to add $4 trillion to the deficit by giving people their money back, along with cutting waste, fraud, and abuse that we did in this bill. Well, they're citing the same organization that the last time we gave families more of their hard-earned money back, that same group, CBO, said, oh, it's going to add $1.5 trillion to the deficit. Well, Mr. Speaker, we actually have the numbers now, and CBO was just a little bit off. The same people that they cite as gospel on $4 trillion said that we were going to add $1.5 trillion to the deficit back then. You know how much they were off by, Mr. Speaker? The numbers are in. They were off by $1.5 trillion. So they've lost their credibility. But Office of Management and Budget actually came out and said that one big beautiful bill will reduce the deficit by $1.4 trillion. And they don't want to talk about that because every Democrat voted no. Every Democrat voted against, by the way, reforming and revamping America's air traffic control system, which was in that bill. Every Democrat voted no. Every American family wants that air traffic control system reformed. They sure want that tax relief. Those small businesses want to be able to get back up off their feet, and they'll be able to, because House Republicans said, we're going to just focus on doing the work of the American people. And anybody that just wants to go root for failure and continue to try to keep inflation high, interest rates high, and vote no on every bill that puts power back in the pockets of families, let them have to answer for that back home, Mr. Speaker. But we're going to keep working. This bill tonight is part of continuing that trend of getting spending under control. Does it answer all the problems? No. $9 billion, I would say, is a good start. And hopefully we do more things like this. But they're going to come up here and talk about everything other than this bill, because they're all going to vote no. And I think it's important to know, Mr. Speaker, what they're going to vote no against. Let's talk about what's in the bill. They're going to be voting against the $6 million cities in Mexico, $8 million for the anti-Israel UN Human Rights Council, a group that is anti-Israel. Why should $8 million of American tax dollars that are being borrowed from other countries be going to that organization? How about we actually get spending under control? $300,000 to hold a pride parade in Lesotho. If Lesotho wants to hold a pride parade, let them do it with their tax dollars, not with American tax dollars. $1 million for voter ID in Haiti. This is rich. They're angry that we're cutting that money off, but those same Democrats that are going to vote no on that will oppose voter ID in America. They're okay with voter ID in Haiti, but they're against it in America. But we'll continue. $3 million, they keep talking about Sesame Street. $3 million going to Iraqi Sesame Street. Again, if the people in Iraq want to have Sesame Street on TV, let them go do it. But how about if they do it with their own tax dollars, not with American tax dollars? Or better yet, they probably can go get it put on one of the many options that the private sector would have. Just like here in America, we've got thousands of private sector options to watch any kind of show you would want. Anybody in America can watch all of that. $33,000 for being LGBTQI in the Caribbean. That's what we're cutting, and every Democrat will vote against that cut. $643,000 for LGBTQI programs in the Western Balkans. So, Mr. Speaker, every Democrat's going to vote against that cut and start talking about, oh my God, the world's going to end and we won't even be able to do diplomacy because we're not going to be spending taxpayer dollars to have a LGBTQI program in the Western Balkans. I think our relations with the Western Balkans will be just fine if we save that taxpayer money and try to get spending under control in Washington. But they don't want to do it, at least we do. $5.1 million to strengthen the resilience of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, and queer global movements. I don't know what those global movements are. I think they can do that without taxpayer money. And then, of course, funding drag shows in Ecuador. The list goes on, Mr. Speaker. Let's finally get control over waste, fraud, and abuse. We started it in the One Big Beautiful Bill. We're continuing it here, and we're going to continue it through the appropriations process. And if Democrats want to vote no, that's their prerogative. You know, they become the party of socialists. Let them vote that way. We're going to fight for those hardworking families who want to get our great country back on track. Let's pass this bill, keep moving, and keep working towards a better, stronger America. I yield back the balance of my time, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Louisiana yields back. The gentlelady from North.
Thank you, Whip. It's a really important week. When you think about what we've laid out in our agenda, the culmination of months of work has gone into what we are doing this week to finally start delivering on the mandate that President Trump, House Republicans, and Senate Republicans were given by voters across the country in November. Voters said they want a secure border. We deliver in this budget that we're going to pass this week. Voters said they don't want a tax increase. And believe me, that was on the ballot because Donald Trump said, I want to keep the 2017 tax cuts in place. We don't want an increase for anybody, and we want to build on it. He added more things. Kamala Harris said she wants those tax cuts to expire, resulting in a multi-trillion-dollar tax increase on the American people. The voters decided very clearly with President Trump they don't want that tax increase to hit. We deliver that in this budget. The American people said in November they want more American energy to be produced. We deliver in this budget, and we do a lot of other things too. But it all starts by getting this budget passed. And so as you watch this process start, you would think the Democrats would want to be joining with us in recognizing that the American people asked for all these things that we're going to be doing. But what are the Democrats doing? They're all going to vote no. Every Democrat will vote no on this budget. Now, they're not going to go to the American people and be truthful and say why they're voting no. They want Washington to keep more of your money so that you don't get that money back. They want a multi-trillion-dollar tax increase. They said it during the campaign and they lost, but they still want that tax increase, so they will all vote no. They don't want a secure border. They said it for the last 4 years. They still haven't accepted the results of the election. So what do they do if they can't deal with the truth? They've got to lie. Just listen to what you've been hearing the last couple of days. Some of you have even been reporting it. I'm going through the budget. This is the House Republican budget that was passed unanimously by Republicans. Every Democrat voted no. Go through this entire bill. Do you know that for every Democrat talking point where they talk about the horrible things that this budget's going to do, they talk about Medicaid cuts. Everybody's going to be thrown, according to Democrats, into all these horrible situations. There's only one problem. The word Medicaid is not even in this bill. This bill doesn't even mention the word Medicaid a single time, and yet all Democrats are doing is lying about what's in the budget because they don't want to talk about the truth of what we're voting to start. We're voting to start a process. This doesn't end the process. This allows 11 committees in Congress to go in open view on C-SPAN to have hearings in March where you can all watch, you can all hear the debate, you can watch the amendments fly back and forth, where we're going to be debating how government can work better for the people of this country, how we will deliver as Republicans on the promises that were made and the mandate was given by the voters
in November. And Democrats are against all of that. And so instead of just sitting back and licking their wounds that they're completely out of touch with the American people, their only choice is to resort to lying about what's in this vote today. There is no Medicaid in this bill. There are no Medicaid cuts in this bill. Yet that's all they're saying. They're talking about millionaires and billionaires. Now they're just talking about Elon Musk. Democrats are so infatuated with Elon Musk that they will vote against low tax rates for hardworking middle-class families. Do you know that the last time we checked, Elon Musk does not work for tips? But you know who does? Millions of hardworking Americans that will get the no tax on tips promise that President Trump made that we will deliver on, starting with the passage of this budget. Millions of Americans will benefit from that provision that we're going to add into our reconciliation bill. Do you know the average pay for a tip worker in America? The average pay is $32,000. And we will be helping millions of those families who average $32,000 so that they don't have to pay tax on tips, or they don't have to have the 87,000 new IRS agents that Biden added going after them, trying to get them to pay thousands more in taxes when all they're trying to do is put food on the table for their families, working 2 or 3 jobs. Again, that's not Elon Musk we're talking about. That's millions of families who average $32,000 a year that Democrats will be voting against helping. They will be voting Democrats against helping millions of small businesses in America. Over 130 million families in America will see their individual tax rates go up when Democrats hit the red button and vote no on this budget. But House Republicans are committed to defending those families, to standing up for those families, to stopping a tax increase from hitting those families. The corporate rate is already locked in. It's a permanent rate at 21%. So we're not talking about the big multinational corporations. They're lying, talking about millionaires and billionaires, when millionaires and billionaires aren't even 1% of who benefits. 99% of the people that would see a tax increase with a no vote are people that make less than $1 million. Less than $1 million. That's who Democrats want to see a tax increase on. While they lie and use the names of billionaires, they're going to be kicking in the gut the hardworking people of America. We don't want that to happen. That's why we're going to move this budget and start this process and start delivering on the mandate that we were all given. And the man who's been the most patient person I know, listening to everybody who's got every issue, and I know a lot of you are saying, oh, gee whiz, do you have the votes? Are you going to vote? And, you know, I've heard this guy's a no. Every big vote we've taken, and I've been the whip before, I've been the minority whip, majority leader. Every time we've had a big vote on the House floor, we're talking to members all the way up until the moment the vote closes. During the vote, we're talking to members. Go look at every big vote we've had. Today is no different. Sure, we're still talking. We talked to the Speaker and I were in a meeting last night for over an hour talking to a lot of members that had questions. We ended that meeting with every one of them finishing as a yes vote. We still have more conversations to have today, just like we do on any day of any big vote. So we're not going to stop working because millions of people are counting on us to deliver for them the mandate they gave us. Introduce to you the Speaker of the House.
Thank you, Chip. Well, you can see Republicans are united strongly in working to open the government back up. We all voted to prevent a government shutdown, and that bill went through the House weeks ago on almost exclusively a party line vote. And since then, for weeks and weeks, that bill has been in the Senate, where Democrats, led by Chuck Schumer, consistently have voted to shut the government down. And we've said all this is about is Chuck Schumer trying to appease his most radical base, the most far-left elements of the Democrat Party, the people who have taken over the Democrat Party. Frankly, they've held Chuck Schumer hostage, and so now Chuck Schumer is holding the American people hostage. And this weekend, we got to see on display what that Hate America rally we've been talking about was really all about. You could see some of the signs. These are just a few. But over and over again, you could see signs like 8647. I think everybody knows what that's about. Multiple signs like that advocating for the death of our president.
And where are the Chuck Schumers of the world calling that out? They didn't call it out. They actually went and celebrated with those people that are advocating for the murder of President Trump and other Republicans. It's insanity. Yet that's where the Democrat Party in Washington has gone. Most Democrats around the country don't buy into that far-left radical socialist base that Chuck Schumer's catering to. And that's why so many are walking away from that party. But in the meantime, that's who is controlling the Democrat Party here in the United States Senate and in Congress. And that's why we continue to be at this stalemate. Not because there's some ability for us to come together and find a common ground. We've been trying. We had a provision in the working families tax cut that would have lowered premiums for families, healthcare premiums, by 11%. It was scored by the Congressional Budget Office to do that. 11% reduction in premiums for families. And you might ask, well, why is that not law of the land? Because it passed the House. But when it got over to the Senate, it was Senate Democrats who went to the parliamentarian and fought to get that provision removed because they don't care about lowering premiums for families. They really don't, and they showed it over and over again. What do they care about? They care about catering to the most radical elements of their base. You could see the sponsors, and it's been mentioned before, the Communist Party of America, the Socialist Party. Well, that's who's taken over the Democrat Party. It's not who America is. America is not a socialist nation. It's surely not a communist nation. But the Democrat Party here in Washington is trying to pull the country down that rat hole. We've seen it over and over again. That experiment's been tried time and time again, and you can go look at the scrap heap of history to see other countries where it's failed. Why won't they go protest over in those countries and just be a part of those countries where it's already failed? But they come here and they lie about our president. They call him a king, where ironically they're also advocating for the death of that democratically elected president. And so you've got to see it all on full display. And hopefully that's what Chuck Schumer needed to go through to show them that he's still keeping the government shut down to appease that group. But now that rally is over. And the pain that he has inflicted on American families continues. It's time for Chuck Schumer to end the pain he's inflicting on millions of American families. And finally, vote. Just 5 Senate Democrats need to come together to vote to open this government back up again. We still have big differences, and we'll be negotiating our differences in the weeks ahead. But it's time he releases the American people from this crazy experiment. With that,